kick it? Can I kick it? Can I
I guess why don't we start off with you talking a little bit about what you talk about on your channel, your major themes, where you're coming from, and I'll let you kick it off.
Okay. Well, what I talk about on my channel is I originally wrote down, I started this channel to join the community of Beyond Civers. But it's I guess it's evolved over time. I haven't really done that much, but I've been doing a lot of watching, a lot of involvement in that sense. But I talk about anthology, about critiquing technology, about poetry, about culture, about a lot of the same things that you guys talk about in the Whole Lawns Network.
Yeah, and definitely from a very interesting perspective, especially the anti-civ theme. I mean, I've read Ishmael, but it's never been my strength to know many of these, philosophical and scientific critiques of civilization. So maybe we can get into that a little bit. Just what's your beef, man, with civilization, or something like that.
Okay, well, yeah, no, I like thinking of myself as a reference librarian. So maybe this is a good role. My beef is essentially civilization itself is really just a refutation of basic egalitarianism with the rest of the planet, basic egalitarianism with human beings living, hierarchical, unhealthy, stratified, alienated life. And the hyper-Western culture today is just the end point of it. It really, from the beginning, from the original, as Daniel Quinn would say, revolt against the gods, or you may say rejection of ontological anarchism, the asserting of the human against the world, above the world, instead of waging war, instead of competing to the best of your native abilities.
Okay, yeah, that's a good description. I guess my big question with it is, so this is the end point, right? This is the very frills of civilization, and you could definitely make a case for that because of all of the ecological problems we're having, and just even in history, there's been so many cases of civilizations that collapse because they can't sustain themselves and they have these same problems. So I guess from the modern perspective, as we're coming around to this same old sustainability issue again, what do we do? Like, what is the answer to the civilization's main problem, itself? How do we move, as Daniel Quinn says, beyond civilization?
Well, firstly, I think you would agree, it's a question of human consciousness. As Ward Churchill would say, we got to decolonize our minds. We've got to give up this myth of mastery. We've got to give up the myth of nature, as this somehow separate thing that exists out there. We have to subject ourselves to natural selection. We have to, decide that we are not masters of the world and be okay with that and take that as our starting point. And, we are a terribly intelligent species, and we can, there's tons of stuff out there that's happening right now that are great models for going beyond civilization. And beyond civilization isn't the Amazon. Going beyond is a cultural thought space, right? It's not like go off be a hunter-gatherer. Obviously,
return to the jungle.
Can't live as hunter-gatherers in an utterly destroyed planet. Like, I have basic gardening skills. That's it.
Yeah.
We're screwed.
So it starts with our consciousness and how we perceive ourselves. That's really interesting, and yeah, we definitely would agree. I think Alan Watts often said that the fundamental problem is we're wielding this great scientific and technological powers, feeling fundamentally alienated from nature, and because of that, we're going to end up destroying ourselves. But if we acted with this technology and with this kind of pretty awesome scientific knowledge from the place of nature and understanding we are a part of nature, then we could probably develop in the foreseeable future of not a sustainable civilization, but really something beyond the consciousness of the current way we've been living. So I definitely would agree, and it's interesting that a lot of people who study consciousness and study, the different philosophies and structures of consciousness would pretty much agree. I mean, like, what's his name? Barfield, for instance. I don't know if you've read him, but he wrote a lot about language and how the structure of consciousness changes with the language and so on. And his beef, I guess, with modern civilization, with modernity, was, we have this fundamental separation from the unconscious and from these from nature, because ancient societies were were embedded in mythos, and the world outside was reflected with the world inside, as above so below, as within so without. So we were kind of just naturally embedded in this kind of spiritual, natural reality, and we've since detached ourselves from that. And he called this the original participation, and how we have to somehow heal this disconnect and get back to the original participation, but he distinguished it as the final participation, which is a conscious enactment in unity with nature. So this totally sounds like what you're saying. But yeah, it's very interesting.
McKenna would call it the archaic revival, right?
Yeah.
I think the best, in response to something about Alan Watts, one of the guys on here, Cosmic Revolutions, he once said something that I thought was very funny. He said, civilization is pretty anti-Tao. And I thought that was a pretty good description.
Yeah, that is.
Of what it is. And so that's essentially what I think we have to do, is that we have to put ourselves back in line with the Tao. To re-immerse ourselves in the world, to open ourselves to the world in an egalitarian fashion.
Do you think, I know we mentioned this before in the last talk, but just because this is totally on the subject, does it seem like since we had this ontological anarchism back in the day, we have a natural inclination towards that lifestyle, towards that egalitarian, decentralized lifestyle. It's kind of embedded into our, our psyche, in a sense. So do you think maybe the story of civilization seems to be this battle between this new consciousness that feels disconnected, and yet this kind of unconscious desire and pull towards egalitarianism? Because if you look at history, I don't know if you've read, what's his name? He wrote the Evolution of God recently. Robert Wright. And his premise is that, at least with spirituality and thus with culture, we've been moving back towards equality and egalitarianism as best we can, with the constraints of the hierarchical consciousness. So I thought that kind of has a little bit of a similarity, but maybe we have this kind of pull back towards our original state. If you look at stuff like the internet and just growing equality and rights issues, and it seems like the internet has kind of inspired in us this real desire to kind of just spontaneously collaborate, like, for instance, these videos, and kind of thrive off of this kind of tribal-like mentality. It really is like an archaic revival, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on that idea that we're kind of sliding back into that at a new scale.
Yeah. Well, I remember the author of Against the Grain, how agriculture hijacked civilization, which is kind of a contradiction in terms, but he said it's about being true to your biology, right? And the idea of egalitarianism as biologically, evolutionarily built into us goes back to like Kropotkin and his mutual aid factor in evolution.
All the people who can quest like a tribe does. Before this, did you really know what I was? Comprehend.